The sales funnel. What's up, everyone? Howard Kingston here, entrepreneur, marketer, and co-founder of Growth Velocity Academy. In this episode, Sales 101, how to manage a sales funnel. All right, so this is 101 level, getting started with your sales. But even if you're advanced, this is a great framework, great way to think about it. Now, I remember years ago, when I was launching my advertising business, we figured out pretty quickly that even though I was really good at marketing, all of a sudden I had to figure out sales. And I've talked about in other episodes, do check them out, where I kind of figured out like how I fell in love with sales and stuff. So do check out those episodes. But I really want to talk about how do you start managing and thinking about how sales work from really understanding the matrix. And that's what we call understanding the sales funnel. All right. Now, I remember I had to learn how to, do sales. And then very soon I had to start learning how to manage sales people and then making sure I hit my sales targets every single month. All right. So these are all different pieces of the puzzle. And that's what I want to talk about today and really break that down for you. Some of the stuff I've learned there, because I don't think many people teach this stuff in the right way. I remember when I was trying to figure this stuff out myself, I spent hours, weeks, months trying to figure this stuff out. And I was just like, I wish someone just told it to me easily. And when I learned what I did learn, I always look back and go, why did no one tell me that? Anyway, so that's what I want to share. So you're going to have that information today. And just like a common misconception I see, and because I used to have it as well, is people think about like, what does it take to be good at sales? Well, like I always used to think, you had to be good looking, or you had to have charisma, or you had to be like super slick, or you had to have loads of contacts. You have to know everyone in an industry. And, I just don't think that's true. All right. A lot of it is down to numbers, about having the right process. And I like that because any process can be learned and optimized and stuff like that. All right. So let's talk. I want to talk in this episode about 3 things I think you need to know about sales and how to manage a sales funnel. All right. So tip number 1 is really to understand the overarching process. All right. So if you're just starting out, rather than thinking about it just being like this jumble of things that happen, sometimes you meet someone and things happen well, and sometimes you meet someone and things don't go well, and it's just all a bit like, circumstance. Well, it's not actually. There's 3 main phases that people go through in any sales process. Now, this is different than a sales pipeline, which I'm not going to cover right now, but this is like an overarching framework for any kind of sales process, right? And there's really 3 stages to it. And this first one is what's called the pre-marketing phase, all right? The pre-marketing phase. So let's just imagine you're launching a new company, or you've just come in to a company and you're like the commercial leader, the marketing leader, the sales leader, and you want to kind of figure out what's the right way to make stuff work properly. The first stage is what's called the pre-marketing phase. Now, this is where you get ready to go to market. All right. Now, there are certain things you need to get ready to go to market. Now, what I'm not saying, this is not what I'm saying. What I'm not saying is spend loads of time doing this stuff so you don't sell anything for ages and you spend months. No. I'm not saying that. But there's some stuff you do want to have, like spending a day on this stuff is good, because then it'll save you a lot more time in the future. Now, what are those things? So there's a few things you want to have ready before you go to market. One is you want to have a sales script. All right. You want to know what to say when you're having a conversation with a potential customer. You want to know like how to pitch your company. You want to know what your elevator pitch is. You want to know what your sales script is. Now, I'm not going to go into sales scripts in this episode. I may do in another one, but a sales script should naturally bring people from, interested, curious through to wanting to buy it in a really natural way, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every conversation. That's the first thing. You want to have a sales script. Then you also want to have some kind of material, like a presentation or a PDF that outlines what your offering is. Now, I don't recommend that you bring that up, put it up on the screen and go through a slide by slide presentation. I don't dig that. Like, it's much better to look someone in the eye, especially if you're face to face or even on Zoom, just having a conversation rather than flipping through slides. I don't recommend that. But what happens is, just reality is, most people then ask, "Oh, can I get something just so if I need to speak to a business partner about it or something like that?" Most people like a piece of information, and also even creating that document helps solidify and crystallize what your offering is. It forces you to think about it in a way that it'll help you when you then go and have a meeting, because you'll understand the offering even better. So the second thing is you have some kind of material, like a presentation deck, not long, maybe 5 slides, or like a 1 or 2 page PDF. Then third is you want to have your pricing on point. You want to know that before you have the conversation, because you don't want to, when someone says, "Okay, so how much is it?" and then you're like, you don't want to do that. And then fourth, you want to then also build out a prospect list of who your ideal target customers are. Okay, that's certainly if you're going outbound sales. You want to start putting together this list of the first 50 people that you're going to go after. Or if you're doing more inbound marketing, you want to know where you're going to be doing your advertising, right? I'm not going to talk about inbound and outbound too much in this episode, but hopefully you get that. Okay, so tip number 1, like, they're the key things you want to have in place to get your pre-marketing phase complete. So that means you're ready to go to market. Now, again, don't spend too long on that stuff. One day you can have all that stuff done. There's no need for you to be spending weeks on that, because then you're procrastinating. But spending one day on it is just like spending a bit of time and sharpening the axe of your axe before sharpening the blade of your axe before you start chopping down the tree. Okay, it's well worth that extra time. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 and phase number 2 is the in-market phase. So phase 1 is when you've been thinking about the pre-marketing. Now you're in market. And in market is really, okay, I have my stuff ready. Now, how do I get in front of the right people? And how do I set the conversations up in the right way? Okay. So for your prospecting, this is where you're really wanting to, get in front of people. Now, again, if you're going outbound, this is where you would be doing some kind of like outbound prospecting, whether it be emailing people or whether that be sending people messages on LinkedIn or calling. Which of those 3 is better? Calling, emailing, LinkedIn? It depends on the industry. I don't know which industry you're in right now, so I can't advise you. But I would say from my experience, and like, I'm usually selling something like software or, kind of like expertise training courses, things like that. Like, these are the different kind of things I've sold over the few years. And, what I found is, like, email is usually in 2000, and like, I'm recording this in 2020s, email is still the number 1 place to get through to somebody. Like, it's hard to find someone's phone number. If you're doing a small business, selling to small businesses, maybe you can do that. But phone numbers are hard to get generally if you're going outbound. As well as LinkedIn is great. But, the reality is most people, I'm only saying statistically here, most people will only check their LinkedIn messages once a week. Okay, now you might be that one person that checks it every day. I'd say a lot of you watching this and listening to this will be people who check it once a week or so. All right, that's just statistically, that is correct. Whereas email, guess what? Most people check their email too many times a day. So you'll definitely get through to the person. It's just down to whether you can hook their attention in or not. Okay, so email for me is the winner, and there's a lot of different tools you can get for finding people's email addresses, things like hunter.io, things like scrap.io, things like that. All right, so there's a lot of different tools that are really good for that. Now that's when you're kind of going to the prospecting phase and really trying to get in front of your target customer. Okay, now if you're not doing outbound prospecting and emailing, what you may be relying on is what's called inbound prospecting. And that's really inbound marketing, like running ads for people to maybe book in a meeting with one of your salespeople. That's very common as well. You can run an ad, someone sees the ad, and they can then click on a button and book in a sales conversation or a demo or something like that with your salesperson. Either of those two things work. Now, that's really how you're going. You see where I'm connecting the dots here? You're going from this pre-marketing phase, which is about having a list of target people that you want to speak to, through to actually getting in front of them. Okay. And that's the in-market phase. Once you get in front of them, then you want to, open up the conversation, follow your sales script. And one of the first things that you want to do that most people forget to do, and it's one of the most important bits, you need to qualify. Okay, so this in-market phase, the big part of phase 2 of the process is qualifying your prospects. Now, qualifying your prospects is really about, is this person the right type of person for what I'm offering here? Okay, is it the right type of offering for what I'm doing here? All right, so let me give you an example of that. So let's just say you're selling an iPhone. All right. So one way to do that is very early. Let's say you're having a conversation with somebody really early on. You could say one or two questions. You could say, hey, so, how old is your phone? Have you got a phone? How old is your phone? And if someone's phone is a month old, they're probably not in the market for a new one, are they? Whereas they might say, oh yeah, my phone is like a year or 2 years old. So then, okay, so potentially. And then maybe a follow-up question might be, are you iPhone or Android? Because you're selling iPhones. Then if someone says, oh, I'm an Android, and you know what, I love Android, then it's going to be hard to sell them the iPhone. Like, don't get me wrong, you could. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure you got ninja sales skills. But if someone says, oh, my phone is 5 years old and I've got a really old iPhone, then, boom, this is an ideal prospect you're speaking to here. Like, great. And then you can be really confident that spending more time with that person is a good thing to do. Okay, so really in this in-market phase, which is the second phase, is about getting in front of the person by doing your prospecting and your marketing, and then qualifying. And qualifying, so that means you can spend a good bit of time with them on the sales conversation. And by the way, like a little bit of an advanced bit on this is the qualifying can be done in a conversation, or it could be done by some kind of, let's say, a questionnaire, or even a question over email, So there's different ways that you can do that. If you're just starting out, probably just want to do it in a conversation, because a big mistake I see founders and entrepreneurs and marketers make is they just talk to everybody, and they end up spending loads of time speaking to loads of people who would never buy their thing in the first place. It's the equivalent of like having 50 sales conversations about your iPhone that you're selling without asking, even though 25 of those people might have bought a new Android phone 1 month ago. Waste of time. Okay, makes sense? So tip number 2 is the in-market phase. And then finally, stage number 3. And tip number 3 is the close and the follow-up. Okay, the close and the follow-up. Now, assuming phase 1 and phase 2 have been going good, you should be having some good conversations with the right types of people. At phase 3 is the close. Now, this is about, this is the bit where people usually go a bit weird. And, I've seen it, like totally normal, totally cool people. You're having a great conversation. You've been chatting for an hour. The rapport is good. the conversation's good, you know they need the product, and then there's a bit like 5 minutes before the meeting is supposed to end, the person starts getting a bit like, you can see them squirming, and then next thing the ass comes out and goes, oh, do you want to buy it? And it just all goes a bit weird. All right. So you don't want to be like that. The close, where you're start asking, moving the conversation from the, what you've been having through to them, like making a decision on whether they want to buy it or not, does not need to be weird, guys. It does not need to be weird. Now, I feel the best closes, really, there's two big principles that you want to think about when it comes to closing. And I know a lot of people struggle with this, so this is going to really help. One is, think of the area of closing the deal being a bit like a fruit. Okay, a piece of fruit, an orange or an apple or a peach. And just like fruit, the longer you leave it out, the more eventually it will go rotten and go bad. Okay, so once you get to the area when you're wanting to close someone, don't wait around too long. The longer you leave it, the higher probability is that they'll think of something else or they'll do something else. Okay, so you do want to make sure this closing period is as short as possible as you can, because like if you think of it like an excitement chart, after they've met you and had a conversation with you, their excitement will naturally just like start to drip off after they've had the conversation. Okay, so that's the first principle. Now, whether you're selling software like enterprise sales software, or you're selling something, maybe something which is a smaller price, like whether it be 10, 50, 100, $1,000, something which is a bit more, rather than $25,000. It will depend on, whether you can maybe ask someone to have a decision in the meeting or not. Okay, so the best way to do that, though, is the natural way to have close the conversation without it being weird or salesy is just to ask a question. So you might ask a question. So, for example, something like, so what do you think? Do you think this is right for you? That might be a really good closing question. Or if it's an enterprise sales, let's say you're selling something to a big company, selling them a piece of software, just a natural closing question would be something like, great, so what are the next steps for us to move this conversation forward? And the person might say, oh yeah, well, I love the product. Let me go and speak to my CEO because he or she has final sign off. Great, that's all you need to say. Then okay, the next step in this process is speaking to the CEO. Is this making sense? So in that close phase, just ask the right question, but keep moving forward, and don't forget to follow up, because the fortune's in the follow up. When you forget to follow up, that's when sometimes people just genuinely get busy. It's not that they've kind of come away from the meeting and gone, oh, I never want to speak to that person again. People get busy, and it's you're the salesperson. It's up to you to put that agenda front and center. So that means they remember that they want their commitment to this and that they need to make a decision. Okay, so guys, what we've been talking about in this episode is really sales 101 and how to manage that funnel. And we talked about how this, the system and the framework for this is, it's not this, sales is not just this chance encounters that's, sometimes someone with charisma comes along and, deals happen and they just happen by chance. No, it's actually very systematic. And you can start managing each stage in the process separately. Now, I'll do a follow-up episode where I talk about, how to manage the sales pipeline. That's a separate thing I haven't talked about yet, but still super, super important. But I'll do a session on sales management another time. So do check that out as well. All right. But for now, the thing to remember is that you have three main phases. One is the pre-marketing phase. Second is the in-market phase. And then third is the close and the follow-up. All right. So guys, if you want to get some more help, there are two ways I can help you right now. One is join my next live masterclass. Every single week, I'm running live masterclasses. So you can join me live. I'll be teaching sales, like deeper, much deeper than this, as well as marketing. And you can join and ask me questions. And they're really, really good fun. So do check out the link below for your free access to one of them. And then also, if you want some more kind of one-on-one help, and you'd like to ask us some one-on-one questions, I've asked my coaching team to open up a few slots just for people checking out this episode. So you can check that link out below. It's completely free of charge. Find a time, book in a time with one of my experts, and you can, they'll help you build out your plan for the rest of the year. My gift to you. Okay. So guys, if you like this episode, do check it out. Do make sure you subscribe and share it with anyone that's useful. And I'll see you in the next episode.